I'm TLARA, and I frequently reflect about how my life would have turned out if my mother hadn't been ill. Everything changed when she died when I was 6 years old. Her laughter used to fill our home, and pictures of our contented family adorned every wall. It was quite difficult for Dad. He seldom talked for months. He just went to work and returned home, and I did my best to keep quiet so as not to disturb him. At the time, I didn't really comprehend death. When would Mom return from heaven? I kept wondering. Dad would simply give me a strong embrace without saying anything. Then at a business function, he met Sandra. I saw Dad smile more when she began to join us for supper. I suppose that's why I remained silent when Mom's pictures began to fade from the walls one by one and were replaced by new ones featuring Sandra. One evening, Dad remarked, "Clara, Sandra, and I have something to tell you." I recall being anxious as they set me down in our living room, and I fiddled with the hem of my dress. He declared, "Sandra and I are getting married. She will become your new mother and live with us. Everything will be fantastic, you see." It wasn't great, though. Sandra began making changes as soon as they returned from their honeymoon. She painted the walls, moved all the furniture, and established what she referred to as house rules. She would say, "Clara, your room is a mess again," each morning. A young woman should maintain a neat environment. Additionally, I have a headache, so please play quietly. Even though I was only 6, I was often asked to help with housework. Dad would just respond to my complaints by saying, "Listen to Sandra, honey. She is aware of what is best for you." I heard them fighting in their bedroom one day. I tried to hear the words by pressing my ear against the door. Sandra was stating, "John, she's just not adjusting well. Maybe having her live with your mother would be preferable. She frequently expresses how much she longs to be with her family." "No," Dad said quietly. I made a commitment to Sarah. Before I promised to look after CLARA. Additionally, she left money for CLARA's college. I promised that it would be used for her education. Unbeknownst to me at the time, things were going to grow even more difficult. Everything changed once more when Sandra became pregnant a year later. Sandra kept talking about how she was finally going to have her own child, and Dad was ecstatic. I was someone else's child, never her own, and that's what I was to her. So those words stung more than any task or rule she had ever given me. I was 8 years old when Emma was born. I recall looking at my new baby sister through the nursery window as Dad and I were standing in the hospital corridor. Dad couldn't stop smiling when he saw how small she was, wrapped in a pink blanket. "Brittany, you're a big sister now," he declared with pride. "Won't you assist with Emma's care?" I nodded enthusiastically, not really knowing what it meant. However, I learned rather quickly. Sandra quickly made me her personal assistant when they welcomed Emma home. "TLARA, bring me fresh diapers. Clara, wash these bottles. Clara, hold Emma while I make a phone call." Demands continued unabated. I was able to cook basic baby meals, make baby formula, and change diapers by the time I was 9 years old. After school, I was stirring rice cereal and mashing bananas for Emma as other children my age played outdoors. I recall begging one Saturday, "But I want to go to Sarah's birthday party." "You must be here for Emma," Sandra stated forcefully. "She is cranky and teething." In addition, the mess she created in the playroom needs to be cleaned up. Emma and my duties developed together. I had to keep an eye on her all the time to make sure she didn't put something unsafe in her mouth or fall when learning to walk. Emma, meanwhile, received presents and lots of attention. A fresh toy or treat was given with each outburst. Emma discovered she could get me into trouble at any time when she reached 4, and she made advantage of that ability. Clara pushed me. She sobbed as she hurried to Sandra after purposefully spilling liquid all over her beautiful clothing. That weekend, I was confined to my room. She accused me the second time she smashed her pricey musical toy. She said that when it broke, Thilaera was playing with it. I lost my allowance for a month in order to pay for a replacement, regardless of the fact that I was completing homework at the time. The worst thing was when she used scissors to rip up her own party attire and then concealed them in my backpack. During one of her room inspections, Sandra discovered them. "What made you feel so envious?" I was shouted at by Sandra. "Are you aware of the cost of that dress?" However, I didn't. Dad cut me off as I was trying to explain, saying, "Go to your room. Later, we'll talk about your penalty." As I passed, Emma smirked at me from the doorway. She had discovered early on that I was held accountable for everything, while she could get away with everything. My sole reprieve from the chaos at home was Grandma Rose. It was like entering another planet every weekend when I was at her place, where I could just be a child. Her home was warm and inviting, with the aroma of freshly made cookies and unwavering affection. She would heap pancakes on my plate and remark, "Look at you, skin and bones. You're running around like Cinderella because of that woman." At Grandma's place, I was free to laugh as loudly as I wanted and wasn't subject to constant observation, unlike at home. Emma soon discovered that her typical strategies wouldn't work when she came to see me. Emma had stomped her feet and complained, "But I want ice cream before dinner." Grandma sternly stated, "Young lady, there are no rewards for tantrums, and we eat dinner first in this house." Emma never came back after that. "Grandma's house is boring," she told our parents. What she meant was that Grandma's house had rules that applied to everyone equally. Then came the day that changed everything. Emma had thrown a particularly dramatic fit about doing her homework, and Grandma happened to be visiting. "John," Grandma said to Dad, her voice stern, "that child is terribly spoiled. Sandra, you need to handle this better. You're raising a little tyrant." Sandra's face turned red. "How dare you criticize my parenting? You have no right." "I have every right when I see my granddaughters being treated so differently," Grandma shot back. "Look at what you're doing to Thilaera." That night, I heard more shouting from downstairs. Sandra was crying, saying she wouldn't tolerate such disrespect. Dad, as usual, took her side. The next day, Sandra announced that we would no longer be visiting Grandma Rose. "But that's not fair," I protested. "Life isn't fair," Sandra snapped. "And if I catch you trying to contact her, you'll be grounded until college." College, that word became my lifeline during the next couple of years. I threw myself into studying, counting down the days until graduation. Mom had left money for my education. I'd overheard Dad talking about it enough times. That money was my ticket out. Then came graduation day. I was still in my cap and gown when Dad and Sandra sat me down for a serious talk about college. Dad started, not meeting my eyes. "We've decided to save that money for Emma's education instead." The world stopped. "What?" "Your sister has such bright prospects," Sandra added smoothly. "And you, well, you're more suited for practical work." Something inside me snapped. For the first time in my life, I screamed, "That's my money. Mom left it for me. You promised her, Dad. You're just a liar." "You ungrateful girl." Dad shouted, his face red. "After everything we've done for you, get out. Tomorrow you can start your adult life somewhere else." I didn't wait for tomorrow. I ran upstairs, threw some clothes and essentials into my backpack, grabbed the hidden photo of Mom, and walked out. My friend Jenny had always said I could stay with her family if things got bad, and now things had gotten as bad as they could get. Life as a waitress wasn't what I dreamed of doing after high school, but it paid the bills fairly. I started at the Silver Spoon, a busy downtown restaurant, working double shifts whenever I could. My feet ached every night, and I smelled like French fries and burger grease, but at least I was free. Jenny's parents were amazing, letting me stay with them for those first few months. But I knew I couldn't impose forever. That's when I met Maria, another waitress at the restaurant who was looking for a roommate. The apartment's tiny, she warned me, and the neighbors are loud, but it's cheap. She wasn't kidding about tiny. Our shared apartment could barely fit 2 beds and a couch, but it was ours, and neither of us had to answer to anyone else. We worked the same shifts, shared grocery bills, and somehow made it work. Any plans for school? Maria would ask sometimes as we counted our tips after closing. I'd just shake my head. With rent, utilities, and food, I could barely save anything. College felt like a distant dream that had died the night I left home. Then, on a random Tuesday afternoon, my phone rang. I almost dropped the coffee pot I was holding when I saw the number. Clara, sweetheart, I've been trying to track you down. How's college going? My throat tightened. I'm not in college, Grandma. What do you mean? Your father had Sarah's money set aside. I found myself telling her everything, the fight, getting kicked out, working as a waitress. By the end, I was crying in the restaurant's break room, and Grandma was silent for so long, I thought we'd lost connection. Those miserable, selfish, she finally said, her voice shaking with anger. Listen to me, Ciela. I'm paying for your college, no arguments. Grandma, no, I can't let you. You're not letting me do anything. I'm doing it. Your mother was like a daughter to me, and I won't let them steal your future. Have you looked at any schools? I could try the local university. They have evening classes. Perfect. We'll get you enrolled for next semester. But Clara, she paused, let's keep this between us. I don't want to deal with your father or that woman. I laughed through my tears. Trust me, Grandma, neither do I. So that's how I became a full-time waitress and a part-time student. My day started at 5 a.m. with studying, then classes, then straight to work until closing. I'd come home exhausted, feet blistered, smelling like restaurant food, only to crack open my books again. Maria thought I was crazy. Girl, when do you sleep? Sleep is for the weak, I joked, downing my 3rd cup of coffee. But for the first time since I'd left home, I felt like I was moving forward. Every test I passed, every paper I turned in, felt like a small victory, not just for me, but for Mom too. I might not have gotten to use her money, but I was still going to get the education she'd wanted for me. And the best part, nobody from my family knew. They probably imagined me still serving tables, going nowhere in life. Let them think that. I was done trying to prove myself to people who'd never cared anyway. I was studying for my business management final when Emma's message popped up on Facebook. There she was, grinning beside a brand new red Mercedes, wearing designer clothes that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Look what Mom and Dad got me for my birthday. Not that you'd know anything about nice cars, huh? Still serving burgers must be fun. Watching everyone else live their best life while you're stuck being a waitress forever. The next photo was of her college acceptance letter. Got into state. Mom and Dad are paying for everything. Tuition, housing, meal plan. They even promised me a spring break trip to Europe. But hey, at least you get free fries with your shift meal, right? I stared at my textbook, then back at her message. I could have told her about my 3.9 GPA, about how I was about to graduate with honors. Instead, I clicked block user and went back to studying. 3 weeks later, I graduated with my business degree. Only Grandma was there to watch me walk across the stage, but that was all I needed. We went out for dinner afterward, at a different restaurant, of course. Back at work, things started changing. Mr. Peterson, the owner, called me into his office one morning. "Brittany, we've noticed how hard you work. How would you feel about becoming shift manager? You know this place inside and out. The staff respects you, and you've got the education for it now." That was just the beginning. 6 months later, I was promoted to floor administrator. My salary doubled, and suddenly I could afford to move out of the tiny apartment I shared with Maria. Years passed, and I kept climbing. By 30, I was running the whole place. The Silver Spoon had transformed from a regular downtown restaurant into one of the city's top dining spots. My name was on restaurant industry magazines, but my family still thought I was just a waitress. My new apartment was in one of those fancy high-rises downtown, with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the city. Every morning, I'd stand there with my coffee, watching the sunrise, thinking about how far I'd come from that scared teenager who ran away with just a backpack. It was a quiet Monday morning when I got the Facebook message from Mrs. Roberts, our old neighbor. We've kept in touch over the years. She was one of the few people from my old life who'd been kind to me. She'd often slipped me cookies when Sandra was being particularly harsh, and once even helped me hide my mom's photo album when Sandra wanted to throw it away. "Clara, honey, I thought you should know. Emma's graduating next week, and she's planning something nasty. She's made reservations at the Silver Spoon. She knows you work there. She's been bragging to everyone about how she's going to have you wait on her table. Says it'll be hilarious to have her college dropout sister serve her graduation party. She's invited all of her snobby friends and even some of our old neighbors. She's been telling everyone how she's going to show them what a failure you turned out to be. I thought you should know." I sat back in my leather office chair, looking out over the restaurant floor through the one-way glass. The lunch rush was just beginning, and I watched my well-trained staff move efficiently between tables, like a perfectly choreographed dance. A slow smile spread across my face as I opened our reservation system. Sure enough, there it was. Emma Wilson, party of 15, Saturday, 7:00 p.m. Graduation celebration. She'd even added a special note requesting the best table in the house. Price is no object. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I could cancel it, one click, and their reservation would disappear. I could have Janet call with some excuse about a plumbing emergency or a double booking. But no, I had a better idea. I picked up my phone and called Grandma, who answered on the second ring. She was probably in her garden. She always kept her phone close while tending to her prized roses. "You'll never guess who's coming to dine at my restaurant," I said when she answered. "Who?" "Emma and Dad and Sandra. They're coming to celebrate her graduation. Apparently, she specifically chose this place to humiliate her waitress sister. Mrs. Roberts just warned me about it." Grandma's voice turned sharp. "Cancel their reservation. You don't need that kind of negativity in your life, Clara. Haven't they hurt you enough?" Actually, I couldn't help grinning as I looked at the framed Businesswoman of the Year award on my wall. "I have a better idea. How would you like to come to dinner that night? I'll give you the best table in the house, behind the marble column by the waterfall wall. You'll be able to see everything, but they won't see you." There was a pause. Then Grandma started laughing, that deep, mischievous laugh that always meant trouble when I was growing up. "Oh, you devious girl. Count me in. Should I wear my pearls for the occasion?" "Perfect. I'll have Carlos make your favorite chocolate souffle. He's been practicing that new raspberry sauce you liked last time." "I'll bring my camera," Grandma chuckled. This is going to be better than those reality TV shows you used to watch. After we hung up, I called in my assistant. Janet, clear my schedule for next Saturday evening and make sure the staff knows I'll be handling a special table personally. Of course, Miss Wilson. Anything else? Yes. I smiled, running my finger along the spine of my business management degree diploma hanging on the wall. Make sure we have our finest champagne chilled, and have Miguel prepare his special caviar appetizers. I have a feeling it's going to be quite a memorable night. As I looked out over my restaurant again, I couldn't help but think how perfect this was. Emma had always loved her little power plays, her attempts to humiliate me. Well, this time she was walking right into my territory, and I was ready. Saturday evening arrived, and the restaurant was buzzing with its usual weekend energy. I watched from my office as my sister's party arrived. Emma in a designer dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary, Sandra with her typical overdone makeup, and Dad looking older than I remembered. They were surrounded by Emma's friends, all dressed to impress. I could see Grandma at her hidden table, pretending to read the menu while watching everything. She gave me a subtle wink when I passed by. "Excuse me." Emma's loud voice carried across the restaurant. I specifically requested my sister, Cilara, as our server. Where is she? I smoothed down my tailored suit jacket and approached their table. Emma's face lit up with malicious delight when she saw me. "Oh my God, everyone, this is my sister I was telling you about." She gestured at me like I was some exhibit at a zoo. Still a waitress after all these years. I mean, I just graduated from state, and she's still carrying plates. The table erupted in laughter, led by Emma. Dad chuckled too, though he couldn't quite meet my eyes. Sandra just sat there with that superior smirk I remembered so well. "Look at her clothes," Emma stage whispered to her friends. "I guess that's what you can afford on a waitress's salary." I stood there in my Armani suit, letting them laugh. The irony wasn't lost on me. "What can I get for you this evening?" I asked professionally. Emma made a show of studying the menu. "Well, since you asked, I'll have the lobster thermidor." "Oh, wait," she looked up with fake concern. "Can you even afford to eat at a place like this? Do you know what lobster is?" More forced laughter from her friends, though some were starting to look uncomfortable. And after dinner, Emma continued, her voice dripping with contempt, "I want you to personally wash our dishes. I'll even give you a nice tip. Maybe you can buy yourself some decent clothes for once." I could see Grandma gripping her table's edge so hard her knuckles were white. Some of the guests were whispering among themselves, clearly embarrassed by Emma's behavior. Sandra finally spoke up, her voice cold. "Really, Clara, you should be grateful Emma chose your establishment for her celebration. Though I must say, I'm surprised they hired someone like you at such a nice place." "Actually," I said, my smile never wavering, "I won't be able to take your order or wash your dishes tonight." Emma's face darkened. "What do you mean you won't? I want to speak to your manager right now. I'll have you fired." "That won't be necessary," I said calmly. "The manager is already here." "Well, where are they?" Emma demanded, looking around. "You're looking at her." The silence that fell over the table was absolute. Emma's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Dad's face had gone completely white, and Sandra looked like she'd swallowed something sour. That's impossible," Emma finally sputtered. "You're lying. You're just a waitress." Actually, came a familiar voice. "She's not just the manager. She owns 30% of this restaurant now." Grandma rose from her hidden table and walked over, her heels clicking on the marble floor. The look she gave Dad could have frozen hell over. "While you were busy spoiling one daughter and crushing the other, I put CLARA through college. She worked here as a waitress during the day and studied business management at night. Every single success she has, she earned herself. Emma jumped up, her face red. That's not fair. You're lying. She's nothing but a successful businesswoman who owns part of one of the city's most prestigious restaurants. Grandma cut in. Who bought her own luxury apartment while you're still living off Daddy's money? Is that what you were going to say? Dad finally found his voice. Mom, I don't. Don't you dare, John Wilson, Grandma snapped. You let that woman turn you against your own daughter. You gave away Cielara's college money her mother left specifically for her. Well, guess what? I'm making things right. I've already changed my will. Everything I own goes to Cielara. Every penny. Sandra leaped out of her seat. That's not possible. Emma is also your grandchild. Grandma said icily. Emma has had everything handed to her on a silver platter her entire life. She doesn't need my money, though from what I've seen tonight, she could use some basic human decency. Emma went totally crazy. She snatched up her wine glass and threw it across the table, causing food to fly and plates to break. This is unfair. All of you are only envious of me. Calmly, security, I called. Immediately, 2 guys in black suits emerged. Please escort these people out. You can't throw us out. Sandra let out a scream. Do you know who we are? Yes, I do, I said in response. My eatery is being disturbed by you trespassers. I'll contact the police and file charges for the damage to my property if you don't leave now. One of the security officers grabbed Emma's arm as she attempted to reach for another dish. They were all escorted to the door, and Dad simply stood there, looking bewildered. Clara, he tentatively phoned back. Please, can we talk? I walked away, turning my back. He did everything over the following several months, including making calls, sending emails, and even making an appearance at the restaurant once. I had him turned away by security. 5 years have passed since then. I've established 2 additional sites, and the Silver Spoon is currently the city's best-rated restaurant. Fortunately, Grandma is still going strong at 75, taking care of her garden and visiting the restaurant every Sunday for her chocolate souffle, so she kept her promise regarding the will. Emma sent me another message last week stating that she had changed and wanted to make things right. I pushed delete and resumed my work, as I usually do with communications from that period of my life. It's best to end some chapters.
This is not a place for you. The CEO's wife's voice reverberated through the still workplace. Ha ha, you're fired. The CEO, who was standing close by, then snorted and remarked, That's right. Ha ha, you're fired. I had had enough of the CEO and his wife's constant patronizing behavior toward me. They had no justification for treating me that way, but later on, they would come to regret what they had done. John is my name. My age is 25. I was hired by Sakaki Corporation, a components manufacturing close to my parents' house, when I graduated from high school. Sakaki Corporation is a small business run by a family. My parents' house is only a short walk away, and the money is decent. I choose to work for this company for that reason. But from the beginning, my mother didn't want me to work for Sakaki Corporation. The explanation is that my mom knew the president's family well because she and the company's president were classmates in elementary school. Will you actually be joining Sakaki Corporation? My mother often encouraged me to reconsider joining, saying, It's not too late to change your mind. Nevertheless, in spite of her protests, I chose to join Sakaki Corporation. She was quite opposed to me joining Sakaki Corporation, and I didn't understand why until I started working there. I arrived at work with excitement on my first day. I had no notion that this was the start of misery at the time. but I was really looking forward to what my life as a working adult would be like. The president's wife was waiting as I walked into the factory, and she gave me a disdainful look. 30 minutes before work begins, new hires must arrive at the factory. High school graduates know it, don't they? It's only common sense. No, I was unaware of that, but did she really need to point out that I had graduated from high school? It's brutal. I bowed profoundly to the president's wife and said, "I'm so sorry. I'll be more careful from now on." Then, behind me, I heard a man's voice. I turned around out of instinct. He was a tall, thin man whose visage was remarkably like that of the president's wife. "Hey, are you the lowly educated new guy?" Haggling. I had run out of things to say. Even though I barely completed high school, I don't need to openly declare that I have little education. The president's wife then introduced me to him without anyone asking. "This is my son, Matt. He is the manager of the factory. He is smart and attended college, unlike you." Matt, who appears to be 25 years old, joined the organization following his graduation from a private institution. In order to become president in the future, he is now gaining experience as the plant manager. With a smug expression on his face, Matt continued, "Having a high school grad in our factory, that's unfortunate," in a loud voice that I could hear. I felt wrath welling up in my chest. There was a reason I didn't attend college, but it was unacceptable to be viewed as uneducated by Matt and the president's wife, who were unaware of it. I was my family's eldest son at birth. My father was the more loving of my parents, and he frequently taught me how to assemble model kits. I loved my father dearly. Years later, my long-awaited younger brother was born, and it was the happiest time of my life. But my father passed away from illness just as I had started elementary school. Because of that, my mother raised my baby brother and me all by herself. She worked tirelessly for us brothers, sparing no time for rest. However, we were always tight on money to the point where there were months we couldn't afford to pay for school lunches. I couldn't possibly tell my mother, who struggled so much, that I wanted to go to college. I believe that if you have the will, you can study any time, even without going to college. That's why I decided to start working right after high school. Well, it can't be helped. Matt can take good care of this high school grad. The president's wife referred to her son as Matt. Being addressed like this by his mother at the age of 25 felt a bit weird to me. Reluctantly, Matt taught me the job. I took notes on each task as I learned them. Then the president showed up. Secretly, I had hoped that the president would be a good person who doesn't judge others by their educational background, but my hopes would soon be dashed. The president was watching my work. "You were a high school grad, right?" he asked. "Yeah," I replied. "Yes, that's correct. Considering nobody else wants a high school grad, you should be grateful I hired you." I looked at the president's face in disbelief. Unwanted by anyone. Hired as a favor. What a harsh way to be spoken about. Indeed, this family is no good. Did my mom know this family was rotten, and that's why she opposed it? For the first time, I understood why my mom had been against it. After work, I was completely exhausted. When I was about to pack up and head home, the boss came up to me. "Today, we're thinking of throwing you a welcome party. You have to attend." It was my first day on the job, and I was completely worn out. However, given the situation, I decided to join. The welcome party was set to take place at a nearby tavern. With heavy steps, I walked to the tavern. Then, a girl around 20 years old called out to me from behind. "You're the new employee, John, right?" "I'm Amy, last year's new recruit." Amy was a girl with a cute smile and a friendly demeanor. "Yes, my name is John. Nice to meet you." "Likewise. I'm looking forward to working together." I felt like I would be sucked into Amy's beaming smile. That's how wonderful Amy's smile was. Before I knew it, while I was talking with Amy, we had arrived at the tavern. We entered the tavern. The boss's family was already there, drinking and having a good time. Then Matt, who was drinking beer, beckoned to Amy, saying, "Amy, come sit over here." Amy seemed a bit reluctant. When I quietly suggested to Amy, "Let's sit together at the end," she smiled brightly. However, as we sat at the end, Matt started raising his voice. "Everyone, I'm going to introduce this year's new employee. Come on, stand up, Matt." Matt instructed me to stand up. I stood up and looked at everyone's faces. All the employees were looking at me with interest. Then Matt introduced me with shocking words. The next moment, this guy's name is John. He's the new hire with just a high school diploma and no skills. I think he's really useless because he's just a high school grad. But don't worry, I'll cover for him if anything happens. We'll just fire him, so he might not work here that long. Lol, it was the most humiliating introduction I had ever received in my life. No one had ever called me unskilled because I only had a high school diploma, and I had never thought of myself that way. All I could do was clench my fists and hold back my anger. Gradually, my anger turned into sadness. Seeing this, Amy looked into my face and said in a low voice, "What's wrong with being a high school graduate?" I can't believe someone would say that, showing her anger. Then Matt, in a good mood from drinking, came over. "Hey, I'm the one who sits next to Amy. Move over, high school grad." Matt put his arm around Amy, who was trying to resist. "Amy is going to be my wife in the future. You, a mere high school grad, shouldn't be talking to her so casually." Matt spoke with a sense of pride, but Amy's face wasn't smiling at all. In fact, she looked puzzled. It was clear that Matt was interested in Amy, but the feeling was not mutual. That much was obvious. However, who Matt liked was of no importance to me. Exhausted and worn out, I drank a soft drink before starting to prepare to leave. I have work tomorrow, so I need to get to bed early. That's all I could think about. When I got up to leave, Amy also began to hurriedly prepare to go home. "John, I'll go home with you," Amy said and followed me. Just as we were about to open the tavern door, Matt shouted loudly, "Where do you think you're taking Amy, you high school dropout with no skills?" Amy froze in shock. "It's just a coincidence that we're leaving at the same time," I said. Matt clicked his tongue. We finally managed to leave the tavern. Both Amy and I had tired expressions. The plant manager keeps insisting on going out on a date. I've told him I'm not interested at all. I see. He does seem persistent, but I think it's better to say no if you don't like something. You know, but if I say something wrong and get fired, I won't be able to support my family. Amy started to share her personal story. She was born to a single mother and lived in a family of 4, including her mother and Amy, her little sister, and brother. Amy's mother is frail and unable to work, so Amy works instead to support the family. Despite being around my age, she's so responsible. I need to be more like Amy. Thanks to Amy, I was able to pull myself together. Amy's home was not too far from my parents' house. We talked about work as we made our way home. When I arrived home, my mom was up, waiting for me. My mom was so worried about how my job went that she couldn't sleep. I told her everything that happened today and what was said without holding anything back. Then my mom frowned. "That family really is strange. I can't forgive them for calling you incompetent, though." She then told me about the past. When she was in elementary school, the president of Sakaki Corporation was her classmate. Despite everyone else walking to school in groups, the president was picked up and dropped off in a luxury car by his parents. Apparently, his parents would show up at the slightest issue. For instance, during fights, his parents would appear and punish the other party. The president, having been spoiled, always seemed to look down on people. Therefore, it's likely that Matt's tendency to look down on others comes from his parents' influence. I oddly found myself understanding this. My mom said I could quit my job anytime, but I felt that if I quit now, I would definitely regret it. So I decided to stick it out, determined to do whatever it takes. The next day, when I showed up at work, Matt was in a particularly bad mood, probably because I went home with Amy yesterday and he didn't like it. Then the president, noticing this, glared at me. "John, didn't you learn in school not to take what's not yours?" Lol. This is why I dislike high school grads, the president's wife snickered through her nose. I couldn't believe my ears. I have no recollection of taking Amy away from Matt. Moreover, Amy is not Matt's property to begin with. What are these people talking about? I do intend to do my best at this job, but can I really manage? I suddenly felt very anxious. The condescending remarks and terrible attitudes from the president's family continued daily. So the days went by, and 5 years passed. I'm still working at this company. The president's family is still terrible to me, but I've managed to develop the ability to ignore it. Even when the president's family said unpleasant things, I learned to let it go in one ear and out the other, which made my job easier. In these 5 years, a few new employees, who are my juniors, have joined the company. 2 of them, like me, are high school graduates. Because of that, the president's family started looking down, not just on me, but on them too. High school grads are just a bunch of incompetents. The president's harsh words were hurting the new employees. I wanted to protect the high school graduate newcomers at all costs, but the 2 of them, who couldn't stand it anymore, both ended up leaving one after the other. It's no wonder they ended up leaving. The president's family kept making snide remarks just because they were high school graduates. And yet, they constantly complained about not having enough employees, as if it were their catchphrase. Really, whose fault is it that we're short on people? Couldn't they offer a few more kind words to the new employees? I was feeling frustrated. Then one day, the president came to the factory in a flurry. He was talking to the person in charge of designing parts. The person looked troubled and shook their head. However, the president started raising his voice. "If this isn't finished, All Corporation says they can't continue doing business with us. This company is finished. Get it done by the end of this week. Otherwise, we'll lose to our rival, Brown Industries. All Corporation accounts for a large portion of Sakaki Corporation's profits. It seems we became obligated to develop a new part at the request of All Corporation. If the development doesn't go well, All Corporation will start doing significant business with our rival, Brown Industries. If that happens, our company is done for." Seeing the president clearly in a panic, I felt a sense of crisis. I approached the person in charge of part design. I had the design drawings for the part in my hand. The person in charge looked troubled. "Finishing this by the end of the week is just too unreasonable," they sighed. I leaned in to look at the design drawings and then at the person in charge. "Is this how the design is supposed to be? Can I try making this part?" I asked, a bit excited. The person in charge looked at me with a surprised face. Their expression said it all. There's no way a high school graduate like me could make this part. I've always been good at this kind of work, but this isn't the toy, you know. "I understand. Just let me try." "There's no harm in trying," I said. It seemed like the person in charge was won over by my enthusiasm. They handed me the design drawings for the part. "The deadline is until the time we head back from now," the supervisor said. I deeply bowed in response to their words. Amy, who was working nearby, called out to me, "John, can you really do it?" Amy asked, her tone curious. I smiled at her and said, "Don't worry, just watch me." Still, Amy looked worried as she watched me. I was looking at the blueprints and making parts with improvements. Halfway through, Matt also started watching my work. Next to him was the CEO. "There's no way a high school grad can make these parts, right?" said the CEO. Despite saying so, both of them were watching my work. I was connecting small parts together and shading them down as I worked. "It's finished." Several hours later, I had completed the part. It was a splendid piece of work. The supervisor kept lifting and examining the finished part. John, this is fantastic. To be able to complete this in just a few hours is amazing. Overwhelmed with joy, the supervisor shook my hand. Even the usually sarcastic CEO was looking at me with a broad smile. This time, you're quite something for a high school grad. Keep up the good work like this. Holding the freshly made part, the COO hurried out of the factory. I felt proud of myself. No matter how difficult something may be, by taking on the challenge, sometimes you can see the light. I thought deeply. Once the CEO had left the factory, Amy gave a small clap from the corner of the factory and smiled at me. Amy has always been on my side. Being able to endure whatever the CEO's family says to me at work is also thanks to Amy's support from the shadows. I want to continue being good work colleagues with Amy. I was thinking about this while working. From this day on, I started to be involved in the development and designing of new parts. The work now is far more enjoyable than before. No matter what the CEO's family says, I find fulfillment in my work and spend my days feeling motivated. John, you've been looking really lively lately. Amy talked to me with a full smile. Whenever I see Amy smile like this, for some reason, my heart skips a beat. However, that date turned out to be the last day I could work with Amy in the factory. The next day, when I entered the workplace, Amy was nowhere to be seen. Maybe she caught a cold. I thought. It was strange, but I was sure she would come to work the next day, so I naively thought. But Amy didn't come to the company the next day, nor the day after that. Worried, I sent Amy a message during my break. Are you not coming to work because you're feeling unwell? While I was eating my lunch, I got a reply from Amy. I've been fired from the company. Reading Amy's message, I inadvertently let out a loud voice. The surrounding employees were surprised by my voice. Amy? Fired? What in the world happened? I immediately replied to Amy, You're fired. What happened? I could no longer swallow my lunch. As I put the lid on my lunchbox and started to clean up, I received another reply from Amy. Actually, the information Amy shared was shocking. I couldn't sit still any longer and ran to where Matt was. Factory manager, I need to talk to you. Matt was having an extravagant sushi delivery with the CEO and his wife. The COO and his wife looked at me with obvious disdain. You? How unpleasant. Toby interrupted during a meal. High school grads really lack manners. What the heck are you talking about? Matt raised his voice in anger. I stood my ground and loudly said, Please revoke Amy's termination. Matt looked puzzled. Why should I have to listen to something like that from you? It's none of your business. Her vital work colleague has been fired. I cannot stay silent. Could you please reconsider the termination? The CEO laughed through his nose at my earnest gaze. Why are you so desperate? Could it be that you and Amy are in that kind of relationship? No, I'm just upset that a vital work colleague was unjustly fired. I said, my voice even louder than before. In fact, Amy was fired because she had turned down a marriage proposal from Matt. They were never in a relationship in the first place, so there was no way Amy could accept such a proposal. Amy had declined in the most non-offensive way possible. But for the prideful Matt, being turned down was unacceptable. Shortly after, Amy was fired from the company. This is wrongful termination. I said, if Amy is fired from the company, what will happen to the family she supports? Thinking about Amy, I couldn't help but raise my voice. Whether to accept or reject a marriage proposal should be a personal choice. To fire someone just because they declined is truly wrong. Isn't this an abuse of power? My words made Matt's face turn red. Then the CEO's wife said, Stop blaming Matt. You're not needed here. Haha, you're fired too. I had predicted this would happen before I even made my appeal for Amy. However, to be dismissed without even being listened to properly? There's a limit to looking down on someone. The CEO, joining in with his wife, continued the conversation. That's right. Ha, you're fired. Matt was laughing nearby. I was frustrated. However, the thought of finally being free from the CEO's family felt refreshing. See? Don't ever come back, Matt said. With Matt's words as the signal, I left the company without saying anything and headed straight to Amy's house. I told Amy about what had happened at the company today. Amy looked remorseful. You didn't have to say that. For someone like me, if you hadn't, you wouldn't have been fired, she said, looking into my face. However, I smiled and said, actually, there's been a company that's been wanting me to work for them for a while now. It's the job I've always wanted to do, so I'm thinking of taking on the challenge. With that, Amy's face lit up with relief. Months passed, and I got used to the new company. I'm enjoying my work more than when I was at SCK Hockey Corporation. There's not a single person who looks down on me because I'm a high school graduate. The president is kind to me, a world of difference from the company I used to work for. And today is an important day. I was psyched up. John, you're nervous, aren't you? It's okay, because I'm with you, Amy said, handing me a can of coffee. I accepted the can of coffee. Yes, when I was transferring to the current company, I asked the president if Amy could transfer with me. Surprisingly, the president warmly welcomed both of us. Since then, Amy and I have often worked together as a pair. Today, we were supposed to go somewhere. That place is... Excuse us. As Amy and I entered the company, we saw the president's wife and Matt chatting over coffee. Brown Industries has recently increased its sales by an extraordinary amount. We need to step up our game, or we'll be left behind, they said. The two noticed our presence, stopped their conversation, and looked at us. What? You've come back to this company. Unfortunately, you're no longer needed. Really? Please leave, and quickly. The two tried to drive Amy and me out. That's when I handed a business card to Matt. The business card read, John, Development Director at Brown Industries. Matt was shocked and slumped into the sofa. Seeing this, the president's wife also looked at my business card, seemingly unable to close her mouth in surprise. Then the president arrived. He saw my business card and asked, How come you're with our rival company, Brown Industries? Yes, I replied. After being fired from SCK Corporation, I transferred to Brown Industries, a company that had been inviting me to join them for some time. The part I designed and produced caught the eye of Brown Industries' president. Brown welcomed me as the development director. I am nothing but grateful to Brown for letting me work the way I want to every day. The president snorted at my words. There are all sorts of people, aren't there? Ignoring the president's comment, I continued speaking. So today, I came to discuss something important. From now on, all parts used by SCK Corporation will be handled by our company. So I came to introduce myself. The president and Matt looked at us as if they couldn't believe it. There's no way that's true. What nonsense are you talking about? Just because we fired you, you think you're getting revenge. This isn't revenge at all. Come up with a more believable lie. I sighed and said, I'm not lying, so please feel free to call SCK Corporation and check. The president immediately began to make the call. Thank you for always your support. About the deal. What? Why is that? Understood. The president hung up the phone, looking stunned. Dad, what happened? These people are lying, right? The two pressed the president for answers. Then, weakly, the president said, What they're saying is true. From now on, all parts will be ordered from Brown Industries. Our company is finished. Why did they suddenly decide to order exclusively from Brown Industries? Matt asked, not satisfied with the explanation. Looking down, the CEO said, It seems the parts from Brown Industries are closer to what SCK Corporation needs. The CEO's wife and Matt were disheartened. Then the CEO clung to me. Who's developing and designing the parts at Brown Industries? Amy looked at my face and nodded. The person you've been calling incompetent and uneducated, John, is the one designing everything, Amy loudly declared. The CEO's eyes widened as he looked at me. I involuntarily averted my eyes from the CEO and then signaled to Amy. Well, we've said what we needed to say, so we'll be taking our leave. I left a company with Amy, and then the CEO desperately chased after us. I was startled because the CEO had such an intense expression. Wait, please. Why did you quit? I'll raise your salary. Just come back immediately. The CEO grabbed my arm and wouldn't let go. The CEO's wife, who had chased after us, looked at my face and said, After all, John, you are a vital asset our company needs. We'll double your salary. Despite having looked down on me for my lack of education, this is their tune now that they see I can benefit the company. I tried to remain calm, even though I was furious. And sure, but my annual salary is $1 million, I said. The CEO was so surprised by my words that he sat down right there. Surely, you can't be serious about $1 million. It's true, I replied. John has been developing parts for various companies, not just for our corporation, but also at Brown Industries. Thanks to that, Brown Industries' profits have been skyrocketing. Matt and the CEO's wife fell silent. They both knew that Brown Industries had been doing well recently. That's probably why they were convinced by Amy's story. But still, the CEO persisted in appealing to me. Please, would you consider coming back to my company once more? Amy is welcome to join as well, and I'll make sure you're both treated as executives. Amy and I sighed. After firing John and me, you have the nerve to say that? Amy snapped. It's too late to change your attitude now. We don't want to work under cold-hearted people like you. With that, we left. The CEO's family was stunned by Amy's words. Then Amy pulled on my arm, and we left Sakaki Corporation. From inside, we could hear what sounded like the CEO's cries echoing, but neither Amy nor I ever looked back. That felt refreshing. Now those people won't be showing their faces around anymore, Amy said. I nodded slightly at Amy's words. However, there was one thing that didn't sit right with me. It was about the employees left behind at Sakaki Corporation. Whether the CEO's family went to hell was none of my business, but I did want to rescue the innocent employees. So, I negotiated with Brown to see if Brown Industries could take in all the employees from Sakaki Corporation. Surprisingly, Brown readily accepted my proposal. Shortly thereafter, Sakaki Corporation went bankrupt, and as promised, Brown Industries took in all the employees who had worked at Sakaki Corporation. John, thank you. Now I can take care of my family. The employees thanked me with tears in their eyes. I was really glad I could be of help to everyone. I felt truly relieved. 2 years passed. As for what happened to the CEO's family, Matt attempted to start a new company using the CEO's hidden assets, but failed to make it work, ending up with increasing debts. Eventually, that company too went bankrupt. What remained was a significant amount of debt. Matt is now working 3 part-time jobs from early morning until late at night to pay off the debts. Meanwhile, both the CEO and his wife have also started working part-time jobs to help pay off Matt's debts. Their struggles with the unfamiliar life of part-time work do look somewhat pitiable, but it's probably karma. I hope they learn to cherish those around them and lead a better life from now on. As for me, about the next project, I'd like to entrust it to you again, if that's okay. Yes, of course. I'll do my best, I replied. Work is going smoothly, and I have even more responsibilities than before. Along with that, my salary has increased. The trust I get from President Brown is also stronger. Sometimes, I wonder if it's really okay to enjoy my work this much because it's so fun. Can you take care of N today? I think I'll have to work overtime. Sorry, there's some hamburger steak I made in the fridge, so please eat that. Okay, good luck with the overtime. I got ready to go home and stopped by the daycare to pick up my daughter. And yes, Amy and I have been married for 2 years now. When we decided to get married, both of our mothers cried tears of joy. At that moment, Amy and I were delighted to have been able to make our parents so happy. Currently, Amy's mother, who is frail, is also living with us. Between us, we have a 1.5-year-old daughter, Anne. Amy, while working, also doesn't neglect household duties for me and Anne. I'm truly grateful to Amy. And, spotting me, ran over with a smile. Daddy, I picked Hannah. Hamburger steak for dinner tonight. I'm looking forward to Amy's hamburger steak. It's the best in the world. Thinking such thoughts, I started my way home. I plan to continue cherishing my family and dedicating myself to work.
I took a deep breath and steadied myself as I entered the conference room. Elliot was already there, pacing back and forth, deep in conversation on his phone. Listen, I need that money transferred by tomorrow. No excuses, he snapped. My wife thinks it's for our latest development project. She has no idea. My heart sank. I had my suspicions about Elliot's shifty behavior lately, but hearing him outright admit to deceiving me was a gut punch I wasn't prepared for. Elliot ended the call and whirled around, his face flushing when he saw me. Tessa, how long have you been standing there? Long enough, I replied, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and hurt. What's going on, Elliot? What are you up to? He shook his head and forced a chuckle. It's nothing, babe. Just some last-minute details for the Oakwood project. You know how it is. I narrowed my eyes. Don't lie to me. I heard you loud and clear. You're secretly moving money around, and you're using me to fund something shady. Elliot's mask slipped and his expression hardened. Look, we need to think about our future. This is just a temporary investment that'll pay off big time. Without my knowledge or consent? I shot back. You're stealing from me, Elliot. From our marriage. He stepped closer, his jaw clenched. I'm doing what I have to do to secure our financial stability. You should be thanking me instead of questioning my methods. I recoiled, suddenly fearful of the man I thought I knew so well. This isn't you. What happened to the Elliot I married? The one who valued honesty and partnership? Elliot's lips curved into a cold smile. That Elliot is gone. This is the real me, Tessa, and if you're not with me, you're against me. I swallowed hard, my mind racing. How could I have been so blind? The man standing before me was a stranger, driven by greed and deception. But I wouldn't let him win, not without a fight. After that sickening confrontation, I knew I couldn't trust a word out of Elliot's mouth. He had betrayed me in the worst possible way, and I needed to protect myself, both emotionally and financially. The next morning, I confided in my best friend Jessica over brunch. Her eyes widened as I recounted Elliot's damning phone conversation and his chilling admission of deception. That snake! Jessica hissed, slamming her fist on the table. I knew there was something off about him, but I never imagined he'd stoop this low. I nodded, blinking back tears. I feel like such a fool. All this time I thought we were building a life together, but he's been playing me from the start. Jessica reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Don't beat yourself up, Tess. This is on him, not you. The important thing now is to protect yourself and your assets. Her words resonated with me. For too long, I had been blinded by love and trust, allowing Elliot to take advantage of my vulnerability. But no more. Over the next few days, I started digging into our financial records, cross-checking statements, and tracking where our money was going. The deeper I looked, the more inconsistencies I found. Mysterious withdrawals, offshore accounts, and bogus investment schemes that didn't add up. It became clear that Elliot's betrayal went far beyond emotional manipulation. He had been systematically siphoning funds from our joint accounts, using my hard-earned wealth to fuel his own selfish endeavors. The gravity of his deceit hit me like a ton of bricks. This wasn't just about money. It was about control, power, and utter disregard for the vows we had taken. As the evidence mounted, a cold fury settled in my bones. Elliot had underestimated me, thinking I would remain a meek, oblivious wife forever. but I was done being a victim. It was time to fight back. With Jessica's unwavering support, I started gathering documentation and building a case against Elliot. I knew confronting him directly would only lead to more lies and manipulation, so I needed to be strategic, methodical, and utterly ruthless. No more Mrs. Nice Guy. Elliot had awakened a fire within me, and I was going to make him pay for every ounce of pain and betrayal he had inflicted. With a thick folder of evidence in hand, I steeled myself for the inevitable confrontation with Elliot. It was time to rip off the Band-Aid and expose his lies once and for all. I found him lounging in the living room, casually flipping through his tablet. The sight of his relaxed demeanor made my blood boil. "We need to talk," I said, my voice firm and unwavering. Elliot glanced up, eyebrows raised. "What's up, babe?" I tossed the folder onto the coffee table, and it landed with a thud. "Don't babe me, you lying snake. I know everything." His eyes narrowed as he took in the stack of documents. "What's all this?" "Proof of your deceit," I spat. "Bank statements, wire transfers, offshore accounts, all the dirty little secrets you've been keeping from me." For a moment, Elliot's mask slipped, and I saw a flicker of panic cross his features. But he quickly recovered, leaning back with a sardonic grin. "You've been busy, I see, but you're overreacting as usual. This is all just part of a bigger plan, Tessa, a plan to secure our future." I shook my head, disgusted by his smooth lies. "Cut the crap, Elliot. I know you've been siphoning funds from our accounts, running scams behind my back. And for what, your own selfish gain?" He scoffed, spreading his arms wide. "Is that what you think? That I'd betray the woman I love for a quick buck? You wound me, Tessa." "Spare me the act," I snarled. "I have the evidence right here. You can't talk your way out of this one." Elliot's eyes hardened, and he rose to his feet, towering over me. "Listen carefully, Tessa. Everything I've done has been for us, for our family. If you can't see that, then maybe we're not on the same page after all." I stared back defiantly, refusing to be intimidated. "We're not on any page, Elliot, not anymore. I want a divorce." The words hung in the air like a weighted silence. Elliot's face contorted with rage, and for a terrifying moment, I thought he might lash out physically. But then, just as quickly, his expression smoothed into a chilling calm. "A divorce, huh? Well, if that's what you want, sweetheart, you're in for a rude awakening." He stepped closer, his breath hot on my face. "I'll take you for everything you've got. The house, the cars, the business. It'll all be mine. And when I'm done, you'll be left with nothing but the clothes on your back." I held my ground, meeting his icy glare with unwavering resolve. "We'll see about that." As he stormed out of the room, I allowed myself a small, grim smile. The battle lines had been drawn, and there was no turning back now. But I was ready to fight for my life, my dignity, and everything Elliot had tried to steal from me. This was war, and I had no intention of losing. After that explosive confrontation with Elliot, I knew I had to move quickly to protect myself and my assets. The gloves were off, and he had made it abundantly clear that he was willing to fight dirty to take everything from me. I spent the next few days gathering every shred of evidence I could find: bank statements, property records, tax filings, anything that could be used to untangle our finances and prove Elliot's fraudulent activities. With each document I uncovered, the web of deceit grew more intricate and sickening. It became clear that Elliot had been plotting his betrayal for years, meticulously setting up shell companies and offshore accounts to hide his ill-gotten gains. And all the while, he had been using me as a pawn in his twisted game, siphoning funds from our legitimate business ventures to fuel his own greed. The level of deception was staggering, and it made me question everything I thought I knew about the man I had once loved. How could someone be so calculating, so utterly devoid of conscience? As I pored over the records, a new discovery made my blood run cold. A secret bank account in Elliot's name, with deposits and withdrawals that didn't match any of our known investments or expenses. It was the smoking gun, the undeniable proof that he had been squirreling away millions behind my back. Anger and betrayal burned within me, but I refused to let those emotions cloud my judgment. I needed to stay focused, to gather as much evidence as possible before Elliot caught wind of what I was doing and tried to cover his tracks. With the help of a forensic accountant recommended by Jessica, I began piecing together a comprehensive financial trail, documenting every transaction, every red flag, and every instance of fraud. It was painstaking work, but with each new revelation, my resolve only grew stronger. Midway through the process, I received a chilling reminder of just how high the stakes had become. A private investigator I had hired to dig into Elliot's background uncovered a disturbing piece of information. Elliot had already consulted with a high-powered divorce attorney and was actively preparing to file for dissolution of our marriage. The news hit me like a punch to the gut. Not only had Elliot betrayed me financially and emotionally, but he had also been planning to leave me high and dry, stripped of everything I had worked so hard for. In that moment, I knew there could be no turning back, no compromise or reconciliation. Elliot had declared war, and I had no choice but to meet him on the battlefield, armed with the truth and an unwavering determination to see justice served. From that point on, every waking moment was consumed by the pursuit of evidence and the preparation for the legal battle ahead. I would not be caught off guard, and I would not allow Elliot to steal one more ounce of my dignity or my hard-earned success. This was personal, and I was playing for keeps. As the days ticked by, my investigation into Elliot's misdeeds only deepened. With each new layer I peeled back, the scope of his betrayal became more staggering and more personal. Through my network of contacts in the real estate world, I learned that Elliot had been quietly shopping around our most valuable properties, looking to cash out behind my back. It was a calculated move designed to leave me penniless and powerless in the event of a divorce. The revelation ignited a fresh wave of fury within me. Not only had Elliot stolen from me financially, but he was now actively trying to strip me of the very empire I had built from the ground up. It was a devastating blow, one that threatened to destroy everything I had worked so hard for. I knew then that I couldn't afford to play by the rules anymore. If Elliot was going to fight dirty, then so be it. I would match his ruthlessness with my own brand of cunning and determination. First, I consulted with a team of lawyers, outlining every shred of evidence I had uncovered and laying out my strategy for protecting my assets. They were impressed by the meticulousness of my case, and together we crafted an airtight legal defense designed to neutralize Elliot's every move. Next, I reached out to my most trusted colleagues and business partners, carefully revealing the truth about Elliot's betrayal and rallying their support. Many were shocked and appalled, but they rallied around me, offering their resources and backing to help weather the coming storm. With my allies in place, I took the offensive, striking first before Elliot could make his next move. I filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences and financial fraud, and immediately sought temporary restraining orders to freeze our joint accounts and prevent him from liquidating or transferring any assets. Elliot, caught off guard by my swift action, responded with fury. He bombarded me with angry calls and texts, spewing vile insults and threats, but I remained unfazed. His intimidation tactics held no sway over me anymore. I was beyond fear, driven by a singular purpose, to protect what was rightfully mine and see justice served. The ensuing legal battle was brutal, with both sides unleashing a barrage of accusations and counterclaims. Elliot's high-priced lawyers fought tooth and nail, trying to poke holes in my evidence and cast me as a vindictive, greedy ex-wife. But I stood firm, my unwavering resolve bolstered by the mountain of documentation I had amassed. With each court appearance, each deposition, I presented a meticulous, irrefutable case, laying bare the breadth of Elliot's deceit and financial malfeasance. And through it all, I refused to back down, refused to let Elliot or his legal team intimidate or gaslight me. This was my fight, my moment to reclaim the power and dignity he had tried to steal from me. No more playing the victim, no more being the dutiful wife. This was war, and I was determined to emerge victorious, no matter the cost. The air was thick with tension as our family and friends gathered for the annual 4th of July barbecue. It was a tradition we had upheld for years, a time to celebrate and strengthen the bonds that held us together. But this year the facade of unity was shattered. Elliot and I regarded each other with barely concealed contempt, our once solid marriage now a hollow shell of bitter resentment and mistrust. As the guests mingled and made small talk, I caught whispers and furtive glances in my direction. Word of our impending divorce had spread like wildfire, fueling speculation and gossip. Elliot, ever the charmer, played the role of the wounded party, regaling anyone who would listen with tales of my supposed greed and unreasonable demands. I seethed in silence, biding my time. I knew Elliot was banking on his ability to manipulate the narrative, to spin his web of lies and cast himself as the victim. But not this time. This time I held all the cards. As the meal wound down and the crowd settled into a contented lull, I cleared my throat and raised my glass. "Can I have everyone's attention, please?" Conversations trailed off, and all eyes turned toward me, curiosity and anticipation etched on every face. "First, I want to thank you all for being here," I began, my voice steady and resolute. "This gathering has always been about family, about cherishing the bonds that hold us together through thick and thin." Elliot shifted in his seat, his expression guarded, sensing the shift in the mood. "Unfortunately," I continued, "not all bonds are meant to last. Some are built on lies and deception, twisted beyond recognition by greed and selfishness." Murmurs rippled through the crowd, and I caught Elliot's eyes narrowing in warning. "For years, I have been the victim of a calculated betrayal," I pressed on, my voice rising. "A betrayal perpetrated by the very man who vowed to love and cherish me, my husband, Elliot." Gasps and shocked whispers filled the air as I laid out the evidence, pulling no punches. Bank statements, financial records, damning proof of Elliot's fraudulent activities. I presented it all, exposing the depth of his duplicity for all to see. Elliot's face flushed with rage, but he remained silent, trapped in the glaring spotlight of truth. "This man," I declared, gesturing toward Elliot, "has stolen from me, lied to me, and plotted to leave me destitute. He has violated the sanctity of our marriage and disgraced the values we all hold dear." The crowd was stunned into silence, their expressions ranging from disbelief to outright disgust. Elliot finally broke, leaping to his feet. "You lying bitch," he snarled, his mask of civility crumbling. "You think you can turn everyone against me with your twisted version of the truth?" I met his gaze unflinchingly. "The truth needs no twisting, Elliot. The evidence speaks for itself." He opened his mouth to retort, but the words died on his lips as he took in the faces of our friends and family, the disappointment, the condemnation etched into their features. In that moment, I saw the realization dawn on him. His carefully constructed facade had crumbled, his lies and manipulations laid bare for all to witness. He was exposed, defeated, his power and influence reduced to ashes. A grim satisfaction washed over me as Elliot stormed off, his exit punctuated by the deafening silence of those he had once charmed and deceived. The battle was won, and though the war was far from over, I knew in that moment that justice would ultimately prevail. Elliot's reign of deceit had come to an end, and I had emerged from the ashes, stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever before. This was just the beginning. In the aftermath of my explosive reveal, the gloves truly came off. Elliot, humiliated and enraged, lashed out with a vengeance, unleashing a torrent of legal maneuvers and smear tactics designed to leave me broken and destitute. First came the lawsuit, a sprawling mass of accusations and fabrications aimed at painting me as the villain, a greedy, conniving wife hell-bent on destroying her innocent husband. Elliot's legal team bombarded me with subpoenas and depositions, dragging me through the mud in a desperate bid to discredit my case. But I stood firm, my resolve unwavering. With the support of my own formidable lawyers, I countered Elliot's claims with cold, hard facts, irrefutable evidence of his financial crimes and breaches of trust. Every lie, every distortion, was met with a measured, meticulous rebuttal, leaving no room for doubt or manipulation. As the legal battles raged on, Elliot resorted to more underhanded tactics, launching a vicious smear campaign to tarnish my reputation and turn public opinion against me. He planted false stories in the media, accusing me of everything from embezzlement to infidelity, desperate to regain the moral high ground he had so thoroughly lost. Through it all, I remained focused and steadfast, refusing to be drawn into the mudslinging and character assassination. My allies, the friends and colleagues who had witnessed Elliot's true colors firsthand, rallied around me, providing a bulwark of support against the onslaught of lies and vitriol. And still the fight raged on, each day bringing new challenges and fresh attempts at intimidation. Elliot's lawyers threatened, cajoled, and postured, but I met their every move with a steely resolve, never once wavering in my pursuit of justice. The emotional toll was immense, the stress and strain nearly unbearable at times. There were moments when I wanted nothing more than to give in, to surrender, and walk away from the chaos that had consumed my life. But then I would remember the depths of Elliot's betrayal, the years of lies and manipulation, and a new wave of determination would wash over me. This wasn't just about money or assets anymore. This was about reclaiming my dignity, my self-worth, and the life that Elliot had tried so viciously to destroy. So I pressed on, fueled by a burning desire to see this through to the bitter end, no matter the cost. And as the legal battles escalated, a glimmer of hope began to emerge. Key witnesses came forward, corroborating my evidence and painting a damning portrait of Elliot's misdeeds. Financial records that he had tried to bury resurfaced, shedding further light on the web of deceit he had woven. With each new revelation, Elliot's case grew weaker, his desperate tactics more transparent, and slowly, inexorably, the tide began to turn in my favor. Through it all, I remained resolute, my eyes fixed on the ultimate prize. Not just a legal victory, but a reckoning. A moment of catharsis where Elliot would finally be forced to answer for the pain and suffering he had inflicted. It was a long, arduous road, but I knew in my heart that justice would prevail. And when that day finally came, I would savor every moment, basking in the knowledge that I had emerged from the ashes stronger, wiser, and utterly unbroken. The courtroom was deathly silent as the judge cleared his throat, his gaze sweeping over the assembled parties. After months of bitter legal battles, countless motions and counterclaims, this was the moment of reckoning we had all been waiting for. In the matter of Tessa Somerville versus Elliot Carver, the judge began, his voice ringing out in the hushed chamber, I have carefully considered the evidence and testimonies presented by both sides. My heart hammered in my chest as I exchanged a tense with my lawyer. This was it, the moment that would determine the course of my future, the culmination of everything I had fought for. The judge continued, his words measured and deliberate. The documentation and financial records provided by Mrs. Somerville paint a clear picture of fraud, deception, and gross mishandling of marital assets by Mr. Carver. A ripple of murmurs swept through the gallery, but I remained focused, my eyes fixed on the judge's weathered face. Furthermore, he went on, the testimony of key witnesses and subject matter experts has corroborated Mrs. Somerville's claims, leaving little doubt as to the veracity of her accusations. Elliot shifted in his seat, his jaw clenched and his knuckles whitening as he gripped the edge of the table. In light of the overwhelming evidence, the judge declared, I hereby grant Mrs. Somerville's petition for divorce on grounds of financial fraud and breach of marital trust. A collective gasp echoed through the room, but I barely registered it, too consumed by the wave of relief and validation that washed over me. The judge wasn't finished. Additionally, I am awarding Mrs. Somerville full ownership and control of all marital assets, including properties, investments, and bank accounts. Mr. Carver's claims and countersuits are dismissed in their entirety. My eyes widened in disbelief, the gravity of the ruling sinking in. Not only had I secured my freedom from Elliot's web of deceit, but I had emerged victorious, my financial future and hard-earned success intact. Elliot, on the other hand, was visibly shaken, his face contorted in a mask of rage and disbelief. This is an outrage, he sputtered, rising to his feet. You can't do this. But the judge silenced him with a stern glare. I can, and I have, Mr. Carver. Your actions have been found to be reprehensible and in direct violation of the law. Consider yourself fortunate that criminal charges are not being pursued at this time. As Elliot slumped back into his seat, deflated and defeated, a profound sense of vindication washed over me. After months of turmoil and emotional anguish, justice had finally been served. In the aftermath of the ruling, I found myself overwhelmed by a swirl of emotions, relief, elation, and a newfound sense of empowerment. I had stared down the man who had tried to break me, and I had emerged victorious, my spirit and self-worth intact. As I stepped out into the bright sunlight, surrounded by the well wishes of my friends and supporters, I allowed myself a moment of quiet reflection. The road ahead was uncertain, but one thing was crystal clear. I was a survivor, a warrior who had faced down adversity and emerged stronger for it. Elliot's betrayal had nearly destroyed me, but in the end, it had forged me into a woman of steel, a force to be reckoned with. The scars would linger, but they would serve as a reminder of my resilience, my unwavering determination to fight for what was right. With a deep breath, I squared my shoulders and set my sights on the future, a future of my own making, one where I would write my own destiny, free from the shackles of lies and manipulation. The battle was over, but the war had only just begun, a war for personal growth, for healing, and for the pursuit of a life lived on my own terms. And this time, I was prepared to fight with everything I had.
"Why are you unhurt?" my husband questioned with an unsettling tone when I informed him that my mother-in-law had been in a car accident while driving his car. She was transported by ambulance while unconscious. The doctor said tonight was critical. When I contacted my husband, he responded with, "Why are you unharmed?" Realizing his slip of the tongue, my husband tried to cover it up, but I couldn't hear anything beyond that. I managed to maintain composure and informed my husband only about the hospital, quietly ending the call. At that moment, memories of my husband's unnatural behavior flooded my mind. Later, a single email on his phone revealed a shocking truth. "My name is Mary Rose. 14 years ago, I married my husband, who worked at an auto repair company. At his request, I became a full-time homemaker. However, the once kind husband gradually revealed his true nature. After our daughter was born, he started verbally abusing me, calling me a parasite leeching off his earnings at every opportunity. Despite growing frustration, I couldn't work outside the home while caring for our young daughter, so I endured his behavior. Eventually, when our daughter entered elementary school, I managed to secure a part-time job. A year later, my work performance was recognized at the company, and my supervisor proposed, "Why not become a full-time employee?" Honestly, I felt more suited to working outside the home than constantly gauging my husband's mood as a homemaker, so I mustered the courage to discuss this with my family. My daughter cheered, saying, "Mom, do your best at work. I'll help with household chores." She was genuinely thrilled. However, my husband remained silent, observing her enthusiasm with a displeased expression. Finally, he spoke, dripping with sarcasm, "I suppose this is just a pity offer to make you a regular employee. You'll start complaining soon enough. You should drop the idea." When I insisted, "You won't know until I try," he retorted, "I earn enough money anyway. You don't need to be a full-time employee. With our daughter's tuition fees and extracurricular activity costs, we'll never be in financial trouble, no matter how much money we have." Unable to counter my argument, he grumbled, "Do whatever you want, but don't slack off on household chores." With those words, he stormed off somewhere. Regardless, I was delighted to have persuaded my husband and couldn't help but share the news with my mother-in-law. She had endured her late, domineering husband and became a reliable ally who scolded my husband when necessary. She always cared about me and our daughter, so she was thrilled to hear about my career advancement as a full-time employee. Now I could focus more on work, thanks to my daughter's help with household chores. Consequently, my performance at the company continued to improve. However, my husband, displeased by my apparent enjoyment of work, began treating me worse. His behavior escalated day by day. "Hey, there aren't enough side dishes. You need to prepare at least 5. There's dust in the corner of the room. Did you skip cleaning?" Despite never showing interest in household matters before, he now nitpicked every detail. Little did I know that his company was struggling financially and his salary had been significantly reduced. I wondered if his harsh treatment toward me was related to his own frustrations. Wanting to lift his spirits, I decided to prepare his favorite seafood gumbo. But when he saw it, his face turned crimson, and he approached me angrily. "What's this? I made it to cheer you up since you seemed down lately. Damn it. Is this some kind of mockery toward pathetic me?" He shouted at me, pushed me, and then began slamming the pot and ingredients onto the floor. My daughter and I huddled together in a corner, unable to do anything. This is what happens when you anger me. Clean up properly, my husband demanded. After overturning everything on the table, he left the room with a satisfied expression. After that incident, my husband started coming home late from work more frequently. When I asked him about it, he explained that he was staying at the office late to study and obtain certifications in hopes of increasing his salary. However, on the days he worked overtime, there was always a distinct shampoo scent that didn't belong to anyone in our household. Could it be? A suspicion crossed my mind, and the word divorce flashed before me, but I couldn't confront my husband. Growing up with a single parent, I had experienced unpleasant situations, so I hesitated to take the step of divorce, especially considering our daughter. However, something changed abruptly. My husband's attitude shifted. On days when he returned early from work, he actively helped with household chores and even assisted our daughter with her homework. The drastic change left me bewildered. Perhaps the company's performance improved and his salary increased, I wondered. Gradually, I began accepting this transformed version of my husband. One day, something unexpected happened. By the way, didn't you mention wanting to wash the car soon? I'll do it at work, so lend it to me, he offered. Oh, I can handle it myself, I replied. Don't say that. I've been tough on you because work hasn't been going well, but I'm not saying this makes up for it. Let me take care of the washing. Oh, and I'll do a quick inspection too, he insisted. I was honestly surprised because he had never made such an offer since we got married. However, when I looked into his sincere eyes, I decided to ask for his help. You need a car for shopping and other things, right? Since the inspection will take about a week, go ahead and use my car during that time. I can manage with my bicycle for commuting and shopping, he suggested. No. Rainy days can be tough for shopping. Use it without hesitation, he urged. Given his strong attachment to cars due to his profession, I hesitated to drive his car, fearing any mishaps. Yet, he persistently encouraged me. Despite feeling slightly uneasy about it, I eventually accepted the keys he practically forced upon me. Still, I couldn't bring myself to drive his car. Even after 2 days of borrowing it, I continued commuting and shopping by bicycle. One day, my mother-in-law visited our home with souvenirs from a trip. Since I had a weekday off, I invited her inside, and we sat down for tea. During our conversation, my mother-in-law mentioned that she wanted to take the souvenirs to a friend who lived in the neighboring town. She asked if she could borrow my car for this purpose. Since my mother-in-law doesn't own a car, she occasionally borrows mine. However, on that particular day, the car available at home was not my usual one, it was my husband's. I explained the situation to her, but my mother-in-law insisted, it's only about a 30-minute round trip, so it'll be fine. She got into my husband's car and drove off. However, an hour passed, and she still hadn't returned. Why hasn't she called? I wondered. She always does when she's running late. As I waited, imagining she might be engrossed in conversation with her friend, the home phone suddenly rang. When I answered, thinking it might be my mother-in-law, it turned out to be the police. They informed me that my mother-in-law had mistakenly hit the gas instead of the brake and crashed into a nearby convenience store. Fortunately, there were no casualties, but my mother-in-law was in critical condition and unconscious, taken to the hospital. I immediately tried calling my husband, but he didn't answer. In a panic, I rushed to the hospital. The doctor's words were cruel, "This is the turning point tonight." My mind couldn't process the sudden situation, but I knew I had to contact my husband. I called him repeatedly until he finally picked up. However, his response was beyond belief. "Why are you unharmed?" I was dumbfounded. He quickly backtracked, claiming he was too shaken, but his shocking words left me speechless. I relayed the hospital's name to him and hung up quietly. Earlier, what was that all about? The suspicion toward my husband lingered in my mind, but there were more pressing matters. Lying on a hospital bed in the emergency treatment room was my mother-in-law, connected to numerous tubes and IVs. Her painful appearance left me speechless. Despite the doctor's diligent efforts, my mother-in-law never regained consciousness and peacefully passed away. She was such a kind soul. The moment I learned of her passing, I collapsed in tears right there. An hour later, my husband arrived at the hospital with our daughter. They too sobbed alongside me, mourning the loss of my mother-in-law. I observed from a distance as they grieved, but my attention shifted to my husband's phone, casually placed nearby. Just then, a time-sensitive message appeared on the screen, and the short text caught my eye. My heart skipped a beat. Did the plan succeed? Indeed, the message explicitly stated that. What is this? What does it mean? Despite my agitation, I wanted to understand the context, so I pretended nonchalance and handed the phone to my husband. "Hey, someone sent you a message," I said. His eyes widened in surprise as he snatched the phone from my hand. "Why are you so flustered?" His response was evasive. "Oh, thanks. It might be something urgent. I'll check it outside." With those words, my husband hurriedly grabbed his phone and left for somewhere. As much as I wanted to tail him, I couldn't leave our still-crying daughter behind. The following day, my mother-in-law's funeral was conducted solemnly. Afterward, the police investigation concluded that the cause of her accident remained unknown. Gradually, daily life returned to normal, but I couldn't shake off the nagging feeling about the content of that message from before. So, one day, about a month and a half after the funeral, as the memorial service for my mother-in-law approached, I mustered the courage to check my husband's phone while he slept. However, what I discovered was a horrifying truth. Is it possible that such a gentle soul like her lost her life over something like this? My hand trembled with anger as I resolved to seek revenge against my husband. The day after my mother-in-law's memorial service arrived. After the service, my husband sat with relatives at a dinner gathering, reminiscing about memories with my mother-in-law. I watched coldly from the sidelines. As the alcohol flowed, my husband's face turned crimson, and he seemed to notice my gaze. Incoherently, he began to confront me. "Hey, what's with that look? Are you secretly glad Mom is gone because you disliked her?" "That's not true. She was always kind to our daughter and me." "I respected her," I replied. "Then why did you lend her my car that day?" "If you hadn't meddled, she wouldn't have been in that accident," he accused. My heartstrings snapped at his words. I had blamed myself countless times for that incident, but I couldn't bear hearing it from him, the one who tampered with things to cause the accident. "Huh? Tampered? What are you talking about?" he stammered, trying to play it off with a nervous chuckle. That's when I thrust my phone screen toward him. Earlier, I had covertly forwarded email exchanges from his phone to mine. Those messages revealed a sinister plan between my husband and his affair partner. They had intentionally manipulated the brakes on the unfamiliar car I drove, intending to harm me. The email he received at the hospital, "Did the plan succeed?" was sent by his affair partner. Their ultimate goal was to collect insurance money after my demise and then flee abroad, leaving our daughter behind. Exposing this truth to our relatives, my husband's face drained of color. He stammered, "I thought I'd already deleted the evidence." His panicked outburst confirmed his guilt. Later, as relatives bombarded my husband with questions, he stumbled over his answers, unable to provide a coherent response. I watched him with disdain as he lashed out at me, blaming me for everything. "Hey, it's all your fault that things turned out like this. Do something, isn't it all your fault?" he shouted. "I'm going to tell the police everything, and you'll face the consequences," I declared. As I reached for my phone to report the incident, my husband finally realized the gravity of the situation. Sweat poured down his forehead. Wait. I'm also grieving the loss of my mother, you know. Please don't report me. I'll break up with my affair partner. Mom wouldn't want to see me get arrested by the police, he pleaded. Even if you break up now, it won't bring Mom back. Besides, she'd want you to pay for your actions, I retorted. Mom would never say that, he screamed, lunging at me, but relatives restrained him. I proceeded to make the call. Just before they loaded him into the police car, he tearfully apologized, but my resolve remained unshaken. Afterward, I divorced my husband. The evidence I had became decisive, leading to the arrest of both him and his affair partner. Their malicious act of tampering with the car resulted in the loss of a life, and they are now facing approximately 10 years in prison. As for the $20,000 compensation I demanded from them, the affair partner's parents and my ex-husband's relatives each paid their share. When they re-enter the outside world, they'll be expected to repay it. On the other hand, I moved to a slightly distant place with my daughter, starting a new life. Despite our busy schedules with work and studies, we support each other and live happily.
I was having fun talking to my former classmates at a vibrant reunion with 100 people when Michael, who identifies himself as an outstanding manager, arrived. He snorted as he glanced at me. I work as a manager at a prestigious organization. In front of everyone, he declared, "You are nothing in comparison to me." He denigrated me. It seems like Michael always believes he is superior to me. The enjoyable reunion was marred because of him. However, Michael was rudely awakened shortly after. I'm 30 years old, and my name is Kevin. I work in the sales department of a prestigious corporation right now, and I'm always busy. Those who used to know me may be shocked to learn how much I've changed. That's because I used to be a shy, quiet person who couldn't confront others. That was due to a reason. My father reared me alone after my mother died before I was old enough to recall. However, my grandma looked after me a lot because he was preoccupied with his job. She loved me and tried her hardest to take care of me. I never experienced the loneliness of being motherless because of her. The elementary school had a Parents' Day event one day. My grandmother visited me, of course. She smiled broadly and waved when she noticed me in the classroom. When several classmates saw this, they burst out laughing. "I take it your mother isn't here." "Poor kid," they remarked. My students gave me pitying looks. I couldn't conceal my surprise at being referred to as poor for the first time. "You're wearing those because you don't have a mom. Huh," they said, mocking my attire. "You're really uninteresting." I was unable to put the emotion into words. I started to become quieter and more reclusive after that. I was still being teased by some of my classmates. I found it incomprehensible that my mother's absence was the only reason I had to endure this. However, I was able to enjoy primary school because the majority of my friends stuck up for me. As I progressed through junior high and high school after finishing elementary school, I began to feel the urge to alter my personality. I didn't want to spend the rest of my life being teased. I started actively joining friend groups and interacting with people, since I really didn't want to live that kind of life. Even though I wasn't very excellent in my studies, I put a lot of effort into them. I became more gregarious with time. No one made fun of me after that. I started working at my current employer after high school. I thought about going to college, but I gave up because it was hard with my father's pay. It was difficult to find a job with only a high school degree, and I was turned down by numerous employers when I applied. However, I persisted and ultimately received an offer from my present employer. I went to work with the goal of giving the company I worked for my entire life. Thankfully, I was able to concentrate on my work because neither my superiors nor my coworkers made fun of me for just having a high school degree. Every day, I felt thankful for that setting. I was there at my coming-of-age celebration 2 years after I began working. For the event, my grandmother got me a nice outfit. You look fantastic, Kevin. It's unbelievable how much my little frail grandson has matured. With tears of happiness in her eyes, she exclaimed, I'm so happy. I was also very moved. I promised myself that I would grow up to be the kind of person who could give back to my grandma for everything she had done for me. As I walked into the spacious space for the coming-of-age ceremony, I noticed that it was packed with newly employed people dressed in formal wear. I looked around for anyone I knew, and soon some of my classmates came up to me. They were elementary school classmates of mine. Seeing them after all this time made my heart rush with joy. But then I ran into the person I didn't want to see. That individual was coming directly at me. I looked down out of habit. Kevin, long time no see. It was Michael, one of my primary school classmates. As he spoke, he put his hand on my shoulder. I instinctively flinched. When Michael saw my response, he burst out laughing. You remain as weak and timid as ever. Which college are you enrolled in, then? Whose fault do you think it is that I'm like this? I felt a bit of anger, but answered honestly, I'm not in college. I'm working now. When I said that, Michael laughed even harder. Not in college. I knew you were useless. Who doesn't go to college these days? Hearing Michael's words, the other classmates fell silent. Treating a classmate he hadn't seen in years as worthless, Michael's character was still rotten. But I was used to this from Michael. He had teased me relentlessly in elementary school. Yes, the one who led the teasing back then was Michael. Michael would constantly target me, making degrading comments about my poverty. His family was wealthy, and he couldn't believe that I was being raised by my grandmother. At first, I ignored him, but then an incident happened that made it impossible to ignore him. It was during a recess at elementary school. Suddenly, Michael started shouting that his wallet was missing. Bringing wallets to school was against the rules, so none of us, including me, even knew he had brought one. But Michael claimed someone had stolen it. The thief is someone in this classroom. Then, unbelievably, he accused a classmate of being the thief. The classroom fell silent, and from that moment, my nightmare began. Suddenly, Michael grabbed my backpack and turned it upside down. I was stunned by his action. Michael, what are you doing? Stop it, I shouted. Despite my protests, Michael didn't stop. He emptied my backpack and started going through my desk. The only one poor enough to steal my wallet is you. Give it back. I hadn't taken Michael's wallet. I couldn't understand why I was being accused and felt utterly confused. Hearing the commotion, the teachers came into the classroom. After we explained the situation, they urged Michael to look elsewhere. But Michael insisted, Kevin stole my wallet. He hates that I'm rich. What a thing to say. I had never envied Michael. Who would want to be like someone so rotten? I remember feeling my body heat up with anger. But in the next moment, Michael found his wallet inside his own desk. Everyone around widened their eyes with surprise. Despite having accused me of stealing, Michael laughed as if nothing had happened. Thank goodness, I almost got in trouble with my mom for losing my wallet. What was there to be thankful for? I had almost been falsely accused of theft, but Michael didn't care about my feelings and didn't even apologize. Seeing this, the teacher asked him to apologize to me. But Michael uttered something shocking. Kevin is poor. That's why he was suspected. It's not my fault. It's Kevin's fault for being poor and motherless. I couldn't believe my ears. Why did I have to hear such things from Michael? I decided to avoid him as much as possible from then on. At that moment, I made a vow to myself. However, since we were in the same class, Michael continued to bother me each time. It was a miserable experience. After graduating from elementary school, I thought I was finally free from Michael. But running into him again at the coming-of-age ceremony was really unfortunate. As I remained silent, my classmates tried to help me out. Working instead of going to college is impressive, they said. Hearing this, Michael snorted. What's so impressive about that? You probably just didn't want to study. Unlike you, I'm studying business at a top university. Shows how much smarter I am than you. I wanted to get away from Michael as quickly as possible, so I decided to just listen to him without reacting. A top university, that's impressive, Michael, I said, but deep down, I didn't mean it at all. My classmates seemed to understand my true feelings and started to ignore Michael's boasting as well. Satisfied with his bragging, Michael finally walked away. I thought I would never see him again. I felt relieved from the bottom of my heart, but fate was cruel. 10 years later, I turned 30. To celebrate my grandmother's 80th birthday, I took her to a high-end seafood restaurant. The restaurant was a hidden gem in an alleyway, known only to a few. Knowing my grandmother loved seafood, I was sure she would enjoy it. With excitement, I walked in with my grandmother. The restaurant was cozy, with only counter seating, run by a single owner chef. My grandmother was impressed by the place. Is it okay to dine at such an expensive place? My grandmother asked me worriedly. The owner chef smiled at my grandmother's words. Today's your special day, madam. Don't worry and enjoy anything you like. My grandmother happily started ordering. Every dish the chef prepared was delicious, and our conversation flourished. Seeing her so happy, I thought about bringing her here again. As I was thinking this, the restaurant door suddenly swung open, and a loud voice came from behind me. Fancy meeting you here. It must be fate. Huh. I turned around, recognizing the unpleasant voice, to see Michael grinning with a woman by his side. My heart sank. Running into him again, especially during this celebration, was truly unfortunate. I decided to leave before my mood was completely ruined. Just as I was helping my grandmother up from her seat after finishing our meal, it happened. Michael started talking about himself again. This is my fiancée. We're getting married soon. You might recognize her. He introduced the woman standing next to him. She looked somewhat familiar, but I couldn't place her. Then Michael continued proudly, It's Alyssa, the cutest girl in our elementary school class. Don't you remember? Maybe you didn't care because you were such a gloomy guy. Alyssa. Oh, that's right. I vaguely remembered her, but it didn't matter to me at all. Congratulations, I said, trying to leave the restaurant. But Michael wouldn't stop talking. If you want, I can introduce you to someone good too. Though they'd probably hate a dull guy like you. I couldn't believe he was belittling me in front of my grandmother. I was shocked that Michael's character hadn't changed at all in 10 years. My grandmother's face turned worried in an instant. I could see the owner chef watching us anxiously from behind the counter. I started shaking with anger, and without responding, I hurried out of the restaurant with my grandmother. I didn't need Michael to introduce me to any women. I was seething with rage. Once outside, my grandmother looked at me with concern. Did something happen between you two? He was being very rude. To ease her worries, I lightly explained that Michael had teased me in elementary school. He's always been like that. He's not worth worrying about. I'm better than him now. Hearing this, my grandmother looked relieved and began to smile. Kevin, you've become so strong. You used to come crying to me over the smallest things. You've really grown up. Come on, Grandma. I'm 30 now, I replied, laughing with her. Despite Michael's unwelcome appearance, the birthday celebration turned out to be very enjoyable. But I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. Why did I keep running into Michael, someone I didn't want to see? Was this some kind of fate? I hoped I wouldn't see him again. Seeing him always brought me down. But fate was not so kind. A few days later, I was at work as usual. It was a day for outside sales. As I walked with my colleague Mark, I saw Michael ahead of us. I was speechless at my bad luck again. I thought, trying to walk past him without being noticed, but Michael spotted me. He immediately approached and started talking. Your company is around here? I can't believe a high school graduate like you found a job. Must be a third-rate company. No need to ask. Michael sneered at me. Mark, who was with me, was shocked at Michael's words. Yeah, my company's just over there. It might be a third-rate company, I responded, trying to end the conversation. Michael laughed again. That poor company stuck with a useless, dull guy like you. No wonder their performance is poor. I should lend you some of my brains. Here we go again. Michael just couldn't resist looking down on me. I was too exasperated to even respond. Mark, standing beside me, looked irritated and said, Kevin, we need to get going. It's a waste of time dealing with someone like him. Michael's face turned red with anger, but I followed Mark's advice and said, I'm heading out for sales calls now. I'm busy, so see you around, and started walking away. Michael, still fuming, shouted after us, I'm sacrificing my valuable time to talk to you useless people. You should be grateful. Both Mark and I were speechless. Michael was unbelievably foolish. Then, Mark, as if remembering something, shared a shocking fact with me. I was stunned when I heard it. A while later, I received a letter at my house. Opening it, I found it was an invitation to an elementary school reunion. An elementary school reunion. Michael would probably attend. If he did, he'd definitely look down on me again. So, despite wanting to go, I thought it would be best to skip it. Just then, a classmate called to confirm my attendance. When I said I wanted to decline, the classmate asked, Is it because Michael will be there? They must have remembered how Michael used to tease me in elementary school. I explained honestly that even after high school graduation, I had run into Michael a few times and endured his insults, so I didn't want to attend. The classmate then gave me some happy news. Don't worry, Michael isn't coming. He has other plans, so feel free to join us. Huh, really? I asked. If Michael wasn't coming to the reunion, I had no reason not to go. So I decided to attend. Without Michael, it seemed like it would be a fun event, and I felt excited. On the day of the reunion, I dressed in the outfit I had prepared for the occasion and headed confidently to the venue. The reunion was held in a large restaurant in town, a grand event. It had been 18 years since elementary school graduation, but this was the first reunion. I was excited to see what everyone was up to and catch up with them. Entering the venue, I saw my classmates already gathered, enjoying conversations with wine glasses in hand. I quickly grabbed a drink and joined the group, enjoying the lively chats. Some classmates were married with children, sharing photos and stories. Then, a commotion arose near the entrance. I felt a sense of foreboding as my classmates, and I turned our attention to the entrance. I was frozen with fear. There stood Michael with Alyssa by his side. Wasn't he supposed to be absent? I stood in shock, unable to move. A classmate hurried over to me. This morning, Michael called to say he was coming after all. I'm sorry for the late notice. The classmate looked apologetic, but since I was already there, I decided to stay. I just tried to quietly leave the venue. Unfortunately, Michael spotted me. As soon as he saw me, he walked over with a smug grin. Leaving already? I'm here too. Let's chat more, he said. Other classmates were watching me. Although I wanted to leave immediately, I didn't want to ruin the atmosphere. Reluctantly, I decided to stay a bit longer. One of the classmates spoke to Michael in surprise. I'm shocked. I never expected you to be dating Alyssa. Michael wore a smug expression. Back in those days, I didn't pay much attention to girls, he said. But apparently, Alyssa was famous among the boys for being cute. Alyssa blushed. We met through a mutual friend. I heard there was someone who graduated from a prestigious university and worked at a top company. And it turned out to be Michael. We started dating and quickly decided to get married. Even I'm surprised at how fast it all happened. Everyone looked at Michael with envy. Michael, basking in their admiration, proudly said, We're getting married soon. I'd love it if you all could come to the wedding." Some people applauded and congratulated him. "I envy that you are in the happiest time of your life. Graduating from a prestigious university really makes a difference," one classmate said. And Michael, being Michael, responded, "Well, I'm nothing like Kevin over there. If you end up like him, your life is over." I couldn't believe he would say something like that at a reunion. I was too shocked to speak. While I was struggling to contain my anger, Michael dropped a bombshell. "I'm a manager at a top company, unlike you, who will be stuck working at a third-rate company for the rest of your life," he said. In front of 100 classmates, Michael looked down on me. I had reached my limit. Then a classmate exclaimed in amazement, "Aren't you working at that top company, Oakwood Corporation? Being a manager there is impressive." I was stunned. That couldn't be true. What was he talking about? I calmly asked, "Michael, which department at Oakwood Corporation are you a manager of?" Everyone turned their attention to Michael. He started to panic. "What does it matter to you? Why should I tell you?" he snapped. A classmate nudged Michael, laughing. "Come on, don't be shy. It's not like it cost you anything to tell us," a classmate said jokingly, making Michael even more flustered. Encouraged by the classmates, Michael reluctantly muttered in a small voice, The sales department." Cheers erupted from the classmates. "A sales manager at Oakwood Corporation. That's incredible. The sales department there is known for being highly competitive. Way to go, Michael." Michael looked proud again, but everything he said was a lie. I couldn't let him continue to deceive everyone. It was time to reveal the truth about Michael. "Oh, really?" I said. "Who approved the new manager, huh?" Michael looked confused. Everyone turned to me, puzzled. "Michael, when did you become the sales manager at Oakwood Corporation?" I asked. Michael blared at me. "About 6 months ago. Why do you care? Even if you're jealous, you'll never work at Oakwood Corporation." Our classmates were holding their breath, watching the exchange. I couldn't help but laugh. "What's so funny?" Michael demanded. "Because, Michael, you becoming the sales manager at Oakwood Corporation is impossible. And you saying I could never work there is quite ironic." The room fell silent. Then I revealed the truth. "I'm the sales manager at Oakwood Corporation." My classmates stared at me with wide eyes, clearly in disbelief. No one seemed to believe what they were hearing. Michael seemed too shocked to speak. "There's no way. You're just a high school graduate. High school grads can't work at Oakwood Corporation. You must be at some third-rate company." I showed Michael my business card, which I happened to have with me. It clearly stated that I was the sales manager at Oakwood Corporation. The classmates began passing my card around, and the room buzzed with excitement. Michael's face turned pale, and he started to tremble. Kevin, a sales manager at Oakwood Corporation, was completely bewildered. Indeed, Oakwood Corporation doesn't hire high school graduates now, but they did when I joined. I started in the sales department right out of high school. Michael looked even more shaken, almost collapsing. "Yes, I actually work at Oakwood Corporation," I said. "Currently, I serve as the sales manager." The path to becoming a manager wasn't easy. Being a high school graduate, man, I had to work harder than my college-educated colleagues. I spent countless hours working, sometimes even sleeping at the office. Through perseverance, I achieved top sales results in the department. This made me well known within the sales team, and this spring, my efforts were recognized. I became the youngest manager in the company's history. I could hardly believe it myself. When I got the promotion, it felt like a dream. Now, as a manager, I strive to make the sales department even better every day. That's why I knew it was impossible for Michael to be the sales manager at Oakwood Corporation. Moreover, Michael wasn't an employee of my company. "Michael, what's going on?" I asked. Alyssa, who had been quietly listening, raised her voice in shock. Other classmates were also puzzled. Does this mean Michael has been lying to us? The room erupted in murmurs. Michael stayed silent, not knowing what to say. Since he wouldn't admit it, I decided to reveal the truth. Why lie, Michael? You work in the sales department at Johnson Industries, a subsidiary of Oakwood Corporation, don't you? Michael looked at me in disbelief. Alyssa was stunned. How do you know that? Michael stammered, trembling. A loud voice emerged from the crowd. I told him. Mark, with a sharp gaze, stared at Michael. Michael seemed to recognize him instantly and was taken aback. You're Mark from university. We were also in elementary school together, right? And you were with Kevin earlier. Are you also an employee at Oakwood Corporation? Yes, I am. You teased me endlessly back in elementary school. Remember when I found out we were going to the same university? I was really upset, but you seem to have forgotten all about me now. I'm working in the sales department at Oakwood Corporation. The classmates were in an uproar. Mark was actually my colleague. After graduating from FTH University, he joined Oakwood Corporation and became my subordinate. Mark also grew up in a household without a mother, just like me. Because of this, Michael had bullied Mark in the same way he bullied me. Mark hated and had tried to avoid any interaction with him from that point on. Unfortunately, he ended up at the same university as Michael, but was in a different department, so he managed to graduate without being bullied. However, while we were out on a sales call, we ran into Michael. At that moment, Mark revealed that he had gone to the same university as Michael and told me about his job. Wait a minute, Mark graduated from F University, right? So Michael also went to F University, but didn't Michael say he graduated from T University? Michael started to get flustered again. Alyssa looked like she was about to cry, tears welling up in her eyes. Michael had lied to us about graduating from a prestigious university and also about working at a top company. How much did he need to boost his ego? Unbelievable. Where I graduated from and where I work is none of your business. Stop meddling. Michael finally snapped and started yelling. The class around us was stunned into silence. Don't boast about lies. Think about how Alyssa feels, Mark blared at Michael. But Michael didn't back down. Alyssa loves me. It doesn't matter whether I went to school or where I work. We connected by true love, he said with such confidence. How could he say that after boasting with such false credentials? Alyssa stood there in shock and began to cry. You lied to my parents, too. We've even had a formal engagement. How are you going to take responsibility? I hate liars. I can't marry you. Our classmates surrounded Alyssa, looking at her with pity. Michael was stunned by her words. His previous bravado began to fade, and he started pleading with Alyssa. Alyssa, you said you love me no matter what. I admit I lied about my background, but please don't say that. But Alyssa refused to even look at him. Of course, I wouldn't want to be involved with a liar. Even if I were in her position, consider the engagement off. I can't do this anymore, Alyssa said and left the reunion hall. Michael desperately ran after her, leaving the venue as well. The hall fell into a stunned silence. I can't believe Michael was lying about all of this. At least the truth came out now. Alyssa would have been miserable otherwise. With Michael and Alyssa gone, we were free to reminisce and enjoy the rest of the reunion. A few days later, I arrived at the office as usual. There I saw Mr. Johnson, the president of Johnson Industries, and Michael. I figured it was about the recent event. With that in mind, I approached the two of them. As soon as Mr. Johnson saw me, he began to apologize. I am deeply sorry for the trouble Michael has caused. We had no idea he was using your name to boast about a false position at Oakwood Corporation. Mr. Johnson looked sincerely apologetic. We truly had no idea he was lying about being the sales manager. Michael, apologize properly, Mr. Johnson urged. Michael, sulking, didn't move. Yes, Michael had been boasting in various places that he was the sales manager at Oakwood Corporation. Mark had discovered this and reported it to Johnson Industries. I was just joking around. Kevin and I are friends, so it's no big deal. Michael showed no sign of remorse. I had reached my limit. Michael and I are not friends. Since he shows no remorse, I expect appropriate action to be taken. When I said this, Michael turned pale. Mr. Johnson began to panic. Of course we will consider Michael's position when we return to the company. Come on, Michael, let's go. Suddenly, Michael stood up and clung to me. Kevin, I apologize for everything. Please, I'm begging you. I ignored Michael and walked away. It's too late for him to apologize now. He needs to deal with the consequences of his actions. Later, I heard through the grapevine that Michael and Alyssa's wedding was called off. Additionally, Mr. Johnson fired Michael from the company. Michael is now desperately hunting for a job, but in this small town, his reputation has quickly spread, and no company is willing to hire him. It seems it will be very difficult for Michael to find a new job anytime soon. But this is the natural consequence of involving so many people in his lives. Whatever happens to Michael from now on is none of my concern. I will continue to live my life with my head held high.